Hi everyone. So there's been a recent development in the Skripal alleged Novichok poisoning case from Salisbury that happened last month. Um, and if this latest report turns out to be true, I can't verify it is yet, but on the face of it, it does seem that these claims have got a lot of weight to them, shall we say. It will be the smoking gun that brings down Theresa May and the UK government. It will be the smoking the gun that burns it to the ground. I want to make this clear right now, because if this is true, this is what I'm saying is not hyperbole. If it's true, it will bring down the UK government, and some people might even go to prison. It's that bad. Although Tony Blair didn't go to prison for war crimes in Iraq, so maybe that's a stretch. But now, as my subscribers know, I've been covering this from the very beginning. I think this is the 7th video of it, and I've put them all in the playlist. So if you want to see the rest of the videos, there's a link to the playlist up there. And for those of you up to date with the story, here's the latest bombshell revelation. And this is in the Independent. Salisbury attack. Russia claims Skripals were poisoned using toxin possessed by UK and US. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Swiss lab found substance that was not Novichok nerve agent. Oh, this is interesting. The article, I'll read a little bit. There's about 4 or 5 paragraphs I want to read, so just bear with me. Russia's foreign ministry has claimed that Sergei and Yulia Skripal were not poisoned by nerve agent Novichok, but a separate chemical possessed by the UK and United States. He said Moscow had received information from a laboratory in Spitz, Switzerland, suggesting that the Russian double agent and his daughter were exposed to a non-lethal substance known as BZ. He claimed the laboratory had passed Russia confidential information after analysing samples of the agent used in the attack on the Skripals in Salisbury last month. He said the toxin was not produced in Russia, but was in service in Britain, the United States and other NATO nations. Russian state media reported. They've got to add Russian state media somewhere, haven't they? They can't just leave that little bit off. Based on the results of the examination, traces of the toxic chemical BZ and its precursors related to chemical weapons of the second category in accordance with the Convention on the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, that is a long sentence, were found in the samples, Mr. Lavrov said. He also noted that the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, the OPCW, had neither mentioned Novichok or BZ in its independent report on the poisoning. However, the OPCW did say its scientists had confirmed the findings of the United Kingdom relating to the identity of the toxic chemical. Mr. Lavrov nonetheless insisted, if of course the OPCW refutes the fact of using this laboratory in Spitz, it will be interesting to listen to its explanations. Wow. So the OPCW sent samples of this nerve agent that they collected from Salisbury, from Portendown rather, to several laboratories, I believe in different countries, and I don't know how many there is at this moment or which laboratories, but I am going to get on that case, and I want to know what their findings were. I really do. And one of these laboratories, these independent laboratories, this is not Portendown, which is owned by the government. This is not OPCW, which is a global organisation. This is an independent lab in Switzerland. They're saying it's not Novichok and it's something called BZ. Is this why, as he said, Lavrov said there, is this why the OPCW report was so devoid of the words Novichok or Russia? Oh, wow. This is what the OPCW reported. So just get it exactly right, what they said. The results of the analysis by the OPCW designated laboratories of environmental and biomedical samples collected by the OPCW team confirm the findings of the United Kingdom relating to the identity of the toxic chemical that was used in Salisbury and severely injured 3 people. No mention of Novichok, no mention of Russia. The TAV team notes that the toxic chemical was of high purity. That is key. High purity. The latter is concluded from almost complete absence of impurities. High purity. Novichok. 5 to 8 times more deadly than VX gas. That would have killed them in minutes. From the time that they left their house, it was hours before they were found on that park bench. And the newspapers this morning in the country are trying to say, I know that if I find them, I'll put them up here. The Sun are trying to say, and I know, I think the Mirror is another one, or the Mail, probably the Mail. They're trying to say that the reason they didn't die is because it was quite wet that day and the rain washed some of it off. If this Novichok was on that doorknob, and if I find them, I'll put them up here. If it was on that doorknob, every single person that had walked through into that house, every policeman that was standing outside, who guarded it, who touched it, or anything like that, they would all have come down with Novichok poisoning. Remember, high purity, military grade. This is serious stuff. And on a side note, and this is just a side note because of my personal beliefs, and just to add fire to the flames that this has been handled just terribly by the authorities right from the very beginning, I want to talk about the Skripals pets. This is the statement from the vets in Salisbury I'm going to read. Public statement. As you've probably heard in the public domain, Mr. Skripal is one of our clients. Today, the government has revealed 2 big guinea pigs belonging to Mr. Skripal died and his cat had to be put down after the unfortunate nerve agent attack on him. We contacted the police straight away upon hearing the news that Mr. Skripal had been admitted to the hospital and a number of times afterwards to make them aware of Mr. Skripal's pets and their needs. We contacted Porton Down in case the animals may have been taken into quarantine. We also offered to take care of Mr. Skripal's pets in his absence. We were never contacted by the police or Porton Down in return regarding Mr. Skripal's pets. They never even contacted the vets in return. The 2 guinea pigs starved to death. One of the cats escaped, and the other cat was in such distress by the time they actually got to it, it had to be put down immediately. To all the people who went through that house and to all the authorities involved in this case, as an animal lover, I've got to say this to them. You complete and utter bastards. Why couldn't they have just fed the things? If this latest report is not the case, if these reports are untrue, this is the question I want to ask. Why hasn't the OPCW immediately refuted them as false? They've been circulating now at the time of this video at about 30 hours. So why haven't they immediately come out and say, no, it was Novichok? Why? Because it's bollocks. That's why. My gut tells me that Novichok was never used. It has right from the very start. So far, this has been reported in a couple of outlets in the UK. I've seen it in the Independent, obviously, as you've seen, and in the Guardian. Along with Russian news outlets, and the only US outlet I've seen reporting on it so far is the New York Post. But if this is true, it obliterates the UK government story, which is already on dodgy ground to say the very least. It would prove that basically everything the UK government has been saying to us for over a month are complete and utter fabrications and lies, and point definitively to this being a false flag manufactured in order to further aggression towards Russia and pave the way for an illegal attack on Syria that happened a few days ago. Syria, Russia's ally. And when you look at the timeline of events in this, when you start looking at the timeline and you start thinking, okay, this is obviously now bullshit. Why is it? What has happened? And you start looking at the timeline of events, it really does add weight to a serious global theory. This is from Craig Murray. He's done some brilliant reporting on it. He really has. He's been so fantastic. Craig Murray is the former UK ambassador to Uzbekistan, where Novichok agents were developed. Uzbekistan in the Soviet Union, not in Russia, as the BBC Newsnight program were trying to fabricate. But this is the timeline. It's been brilliant. That Craig Murray has. So on March the 4th, rather, Sergei and Yulia Skripal are attacked with a nerve agent in Salisbury. 2 days later, Boris Johnson blames Russia and calls Russia a malign force. A day after that, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia arrives in London for an official visit. You may remember he's been doing a world tour, and they've all been saying, "Oh, isn't he wonderful? Isn't he so advanced? Now he's letting women drive." Valery Gerasimov, Russian Chief of General Staff, on March 13th, so 6 days later after bin Salman's visit to the UK, states that Russia has intelligence a fake chemical attack is planned against civilians in Syria as a pretext for US bombing of Damascus, and that Russia will respond militarily. So March 13th. March the 13th. Russian Chief of General Staff states that Russia has intelligence of a fake chemical attack being planned against civilians in Syria. What just happened? Like 4 weeks after that they made that statement. Putin's on record several times saying, yeah, there's going to be a chemical attack, a false flag event in Syria. So March the 19th, 6 days after that statement, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia arrives in Washington for a visit. April the 8th, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia arrives in Paris for an official visit. Which 3 countries did the attack on Syria? UK, US and France? April the 8th, Saudi-funded jihadist groups Jaish al-Islam and Tahrir al-Sham and UK-funded jihadist rescue group, the White Helmets, claim a chemical weapons attack has occurred in their enclave of Douma the previous day, just before its agreed handover to the Syrian army, and blamed the Syrian government. So they were going to hand over the last 5% of the city, and then they're saying that Syria just did a chemical attack. April 11th, Saudi Arabia pledges support for the attack on Syria. April the 14th, US, UK and France attack on Syria begins. So why is Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia connected to this? Why is he in the timeline? The importance of him in this timeline and making connections between him and what he's been doing is money. Of course, it always comes down to money. Saudi Arabia are close allies to Israel, the UK, and the Americans, and are major funders to those 2 rebel groups you just heard of, and also to the Army of Islam, which were controlling that area in Douma in eastern Ghouta, that was attacked by those 3 countries just a couple of days ago. These groups that they are funding are trying to take over the Syrian government to create a caliphate, because then the Saudis then get their oil pipeline that they can build through Syria and supply Europe with oil, which at the moment is coming from Russia. This is something they've been trying to do for decades, you know. This is not a new thing. This has been known for a long, long time. Several officials, US officials, are on record as saying this is what we want to do. So all 4 of those countries, Saudi, Israel, US and UK, all have an extremely powerful motive to cultivate this evidence and to cultivate any anti-Russian sentiment. This story has been so obviously bullshit from the very start of it, to anybody who thinks themselves and is capable of any level of critical thinking. It's complete and utter BS. There are way too many Unanswered questions for a start. Why? Why would Putin and Russia poison an ex-British agent who they had in prison for 4 years? If they wanted to kill him, they could have got rid of him very easily in that 4 years. And then in 1990, he was released as a part of a swap deal. So why would they kill him? Just before an election and 100 days before the World Cup. In a way that points straight at Putin's front door and says, you did this, it was Novichok. It was a Russian chemical. Why do it in such a shoddy way as well? If you look at all the other assassinations, they've been one-to-one, very personal, the Russian assassinations, I'm talking specifically of Litvinenko. He was up close, somebody injected him with was it plutonium? I've forgotten the name of the chemical now that they did with him. But they did it through a pellet through the end of an umbrella. It was up close and personal. Why have they put it on a door handle? Why did none of the officers who have been using that door get ill? That door was up for weeks after this happened. I think it was about 2 weeks it was up. People were going in and out all the time without gloves. If I've got the evidence again, I'll put it up here. They were walking in and out all the time without gloves. Why weren't they? Why weren't they poisoned? Why didn't they, have to go to hospital? None of it makes any sense. Why could they identify Novichok so quickly and know how to react? Why didn't the Skripals die? If it's 5 to 8% times more lethal than VX gas, why didn't they die immediately? Why were they able to drive their car around, go to the Sainsbury's car park, walk from Sainsbury's to the pub, have a drink in the pub, walk from the pub to the restaurant, have a meal in the restaurant, walk from the restaurant to the park before finally collapsing? 5 to 8 times more powerful than VX. How could they do all that? I don't buy the, oh, it was a bit wet that day theory. I'm sorry, I don't. Why did the British rush to action to condemn Russia? Why did they rush to condemn Russia? Like literally the next day, I think it was that Boris Johnson said it, or the day after. Before the OPCW report, before any high resolution trace analysis that Jeremy Corbyn asked for. Why do it? Why not just wait a few days? Why did they refuse Yulia's cousin a visa to Britain to see her? She's a Russian citizen, remember. Why was it that when the phone call, I'm sure you've heard it by now, between Yulia and her cousin, why did Yulia just sound so under duress? Why did she say, oh, you won't get a visa? You won't get that. Why was her statements, Yulia's statements, so obviously scripted? Why did the OPCW not say it was Novichok or the words Russia or Soviet Union anywhere in their report? And why has this independent laboratory in Switzerland come out and said it's not Novichok, it's BZ? Why? I'll tell you why. It's a bullshit story. That's why. And nobody with 2 brain cells to rub together in their head believes a fucking word of it, to be quite honest. Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe. Please hit the bell, otherwise you won't get any more videos from me. And please, I need your help to keep doing this. If you can, support me with a couple of bucks, whatever you can afford a month, and I will keep trying to give you the truth and get to the truth and the facts rather than the bullshit and the propaganda that you get from the mainstream and corporate media. Thanks so much for your support. Until next time, peace and take care.